certified and all this stuff, and kind of started thinking back on my own experience and experience I've had with clients that were really good at like sales. So like in my past, I've worked with like IBM and Cisco and Accenture and some other places. That's their whole life, was basically large complex deals, right? And they get really good at doing certain things, and they tend to methodologize it. So thinking back kind of both in the practical experience and then the kind of structure of MEDDIC, we came up with this kind of 3 basic applications of it. One is value, and what value in terms of metrics, in terms of MEDDIC means is knowing and understanding and what they call implicating the pain across a broad stake of stakeholders, but really understanding the pain in depth, understanding the implication of the pain in depth, understanding how it affects different people, and having an understanding in deep about what's tangible evidence of that pain. You know, if you talk through it and say, okay, this is the problem, you really want to get down to the level of how big a problem, to whom, why, and what's it costing the organization now. That's kind of the depth of pain you want to get to. And therefore, that pain influences what we're going to talk about in terms of metrics. So metrics means something either quantifiable or at least, I should say quantitative, or at least quantifiable, about if they bought from you, how would their life be different, and something that you can actually enumerate or at least estimate some kind of impact, right? So the better job we do with that, we know that we understand their pain, but also we're going to have a better business case than somebody else that's not going through that effort. And then DC, again, what happens here is it moves decision criteria up in the process, and it's going to get reinforced and tested throughout the other stops, right? So what it says is, what we want to know is, based on the pain and based on the metrics, what are the decision criteria that most favor that the client should adopt, right? Or do they have, and should they adopt? Which you find in many cases they don't have decision criteria, so it can influence it. And then 2 is, how do we start to shade that decision criteria towards attributes that make us the best choice, that differentiate us, that actually plays into our strengths and not our competition strengths. But basically, how do we keep getting the client to tell us, here's how they're going to make the decision, here's why that decision criteria makes sense, and start to be able to influence them that we're the best kind of solution given those 2 facts. So let me stop there. Does anybody have, like, kind of quick, anybody have any questions or comments about where we're at in the process? Okay, if you know, by the way. All right. So the first thing that's different about MEDDIC is the depth at which we identify the value that the client's seeking when going after an MSP or looking for somebody to help on a cold managed basis, right? The second big difference in MEDDIC is it tells us to engage all the stakeholders that can help us identify or show evidence of that value, but also help influence them that we're the better choice than somebody else, right? So that's where the champion comes in. And it says that you should be looking for or at least a deal that has a champion on board is more qualified than a deal that doesn't have a champion on board. 2 is there's very specific things you're looking for a champion to do, which we'll touch on today. We won't go into great depth, but you're always looking for a champion. You're looking for the champion to give you certain things, certain advantages in a deal that they're not given to somebody else, right? So like, somebody can't be a champion for 2 different MSPs in the same deal. You really want to have somebody to have a kind of a rooting interest at minimum, but a betting interest or a vested interest in their company selecting us as their service provider. EB is the economic buyer. And then again, the other stakeholders are competition, both explicit competition, internal competition. So one form of competition, for example, is instead of hiring us, the internal IT team would prefer to do the work themselves, right? So that could be a form of competition. Or we're talking to somebody, or controller, and they're more concerned about what's going on with their ERP than anything to do with the managed service contract, right? So it's any force, either internal or external, that keeps them from signing the deal. And then process is kind of the decision process, the paper process. But what that says is, how do we keep the deal? How do we keep energy and momentum in the deal moving forward? And what are the steps required in order for us to finally get us a contract signed? So again, if you think about it this way, where it's a little more kind of sequential in the deal, it starts to make more sense. So what it's saying is, as we're doing the discovery meeting, we're looking for the value equation. As we're assessing, we want to make sure we're talking to all the stakeholders that matter in it. You know, as we get towards business case into the proposal process, what we're looking to do is build consensus with the stakeholders in order to get them to agree that we're the best choice. We're incorporating any changes in the process that they kind of bring up at the last minute, and Ryan's going to have a very good example of this. But basically, what it allows us to do is, if we get really good at that 6-step sales process, and we get awesome at qualifying those opportunities and pursuing those opportunities in a more disciplined or scientific method, or whatever word you want to use, using MEDDIC, that's what we're after in terms of, you know, making our MSP the best, the master of the sales process in our local market.